important, particularly now. And I thought I would start by just sharing how I got involved in storytelling and where that inspiration, sort of that aha moment came for me. And it happened about a dozen years ago. I wanted to write the story of how my family came to this country from Pakistan. I didn't really know the details of that aspect of our personal story. I was 7 years old at the time. We had left Dhaka, where I was born, right before a civil war broke out, and left family and country and home and culture and everything that was familiar to us to make this journey to America. And so even though I'm a writer, often we don't take the time and give ourselves the opportunity to write our own stories. So I knew I needed an assignment and some structure and a deadline and some discipline. So I signed up for a writing class in my town with this assignment in mind. And then I sat my parents down one time when they came to visit and really interviewed them about what that journey was like for them and what it was like for us, for myself and my brother as young kids coming to a new country, a new culture, not speaking the language. And I found it fascinating. It's a uniquely our story, but I think it resonates with a lot of people who are making a similar kind of journey. And so I wrote the story down for this assignment, and then I read it to my kids. And my kids were quite shocked because their life in America is very different from the one that their mother experienced. And so they learned, I think, quite a bit about who their mother is. And then I read it to my parents. And my father in particular had the reaction I was hoping, which was tears in his eyes. For him to hear his journey, his story retold by his daughter, and the fact that I valued it and learned so much and was so grateful for all of his sacrifices. I think that's the gift any parent would want to receive. And it was, very fulfilling for me, and I think very satisfying for him to hear that his sacrifices, their sacrifices, were worth it. And so my parents both were so happy to have read that. And so that's it. I tucked the story away. I thought to myself, I've recorded this aspect of our story. But then a friend of mine read it and she found it interesting. And she said, share it with this magazine. I'm here in Washington, D.C. There's a very well-respected magazine called The Washingtonian. And she said, send it to an editor there. And I thought, why in the world would they be interested in my ordinary story about how we came and what we did and what our day-to-day life was like? But I figured I've written it. I have nothing to lose. I sent it to an editor there, and they were interested in publishing it, which was really exciting. I think it was the first time that they featured a Muslim family in their pages. And of course, when it was published, my family bought every issue. They were thrilled that our story was in this prominent magazine. But it's what happened afterwards that really changed my life and made me realize the power of our stories. So I started getting emails. First a few, then dozens, then several hundred, and with a similar message. And that was, in fact, I'll just read one of the reactions that summed up many of the messages that I was getting. And this one was from a Jewish grandmother who wrote to me. And she said, I was struck with how similar you and your faith and values are to my family. I'm a Jewish woman who grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, but my grandparents and their families were from all over Europe. They too came to America when their respective countries had civil and political strife. Your struggles are identical to ours in terms of our wanting to pass on traditions, worrying about perceptions from the public, and the trials and tribulations of raising our children and grandchildren and passing on our core values, traditions, and faith. And then she ended, I realize that people from all over the world have more similarities than differences, and your writing brings that to light. And that for me was so powerful. it speaks to the power of our ordinary personal stories to connect us. We may think our stories are nothing special, but they are profound in communicating who we are and what we value, and in connecting us with each other, because we value very much the same things. We have the same dreams. And so while they're unique to us, they're universal in the emotions and the feelings and the connections that they engender. And stories, I think they help cultivate a relationship, a friendship, a sense of trust, familiarity. And that's where it all begins, right? It doesn't matter what faith background or what country or culture, what political ideology, whatever that may be, it's through our story that we start a relationship and get to know each other just as friends, as human beings, as neighbors. And so for me, stories humanize. And that's how I started. Sorry. So I started writing personal stories, sometimes my own, and sometimes the stories of others, but all with the intention of broadening this conversation, of moving beyond stereotypes and generalizations, and just getting to know each other as neighbors and friends. And so about 10 years ago, I started this project called the 30 Days Project. And it was, again, a way for me to really share the essence of the month of Ramadan, as we are in the month of Ramadan now. And I wanted my children to understand that the month is really about more than simply fasting, about not eating and drinking. It's about being our best selves, about being kind, about doing good, about expressing gratitude. And I thought, the best way to share these values would be to practice them. And so that first year, we decided we would do one good deed each day. And as a writer, I thought, okay, let's write about it. Let's blog about it. And it was meant to be, my kids were young at the time. My son was 8 or 9, my daughter, a young teen. And I didn't want them to feel like they had to change the world in order to do good. There's so many ways to do good within your family, within your community, for your neighbors. So we picked projects like baking moon and star cookies, for example, and taking them to our neighbors, and hosting a community iftar. And I remember my parents were visiting at the time, and just spending time, the kids spending time with their grandparents, cooking together, doing experiments together, reading stories together. In our faith tradition, as you know, Ghazala, there's a saying by our prophet that making someone smile is a form of charity. And those are the values that I wanted the kids to understand, that don't feel that you have to do something extraordinary to make a difference. Make someone smile. So that first year, that's what we did. And it became a blog called 30 Days, 30 Deeds. And people started following along. This was before social media was as rampant as it is. So people would forward the blog to their friends and family and neighbors, and share the stories in different ways. And the next year we decided to focus on another aspect of the month, which is gratitude. And it became 30 gratitudes, each day sharing what we're grateful for, big things, small things, everyday things, and just writing about it and putting it out there. And we continued year after year. It became a family tradition. So the following year, it was 30 traditions, then 30 recipes, then 30 inspiring stories, and so on. And the blog grew sort of organically, without any effort on my part. I had no intention of making it viral. I had no intention of producing a book afterwards. I just really was trying to teach my kids some values, and share really the importance of this month beyond fasting. But it found an audience of its own internationally, from Azerbaijan to Zambia and every country in between. People started reading the blog, and I would get these emails saying, we're not Muslim, we don't celebrate the month, but we look forward to it because we know that we're going to get these stories each day. So again, it's the power of our stories, our everyday, very ordinary human stories, told in an honest way that connects us, through our humanity. And so the other aspect of that I realized as I was writing the blog is that while it takes place during Ramadan and the central characters happen to be Muslim, really it's about the values that we all believe in, right? That we all want to do good. We all are grateful for so much in our lives. We all cherish our traditions. I mean, this weekend, for example, there are 3 or more faith traditions celebrating their holidays. Passover and Easter and Ramadan and various other holidays are being celebrated coincidentally. And so it's such a beautiful time, I think, to share our traditions and learn about each other's. What makes it important to us? What are the recipes we like to cook? How do we like to celebrate these special moments? It's through the stories that we connect. And so this is how the blog developed. And last year, it was the 10-year anniversary. And I wanted to do something special, but it wasn't until I was connected to an extraordinary Afghan woman who I found out was an amazing artist, so much so that she had exhibited at the Smithsonian Museum. She does miniature paintings and illuminations. And she was looking for some help at that time. And it just clicked, this idea of doing a book and, hopefully supporting her at a time when she needed some extra support would work beautifully together. And so we collaborated on this book project. I collected many of the stories from the 30 Days blog. She did some incredible art. And I think perhaps we'll pause here and just show the video where I think you can see some of the art and what makes this book quite unique.
It's our personal stories that connect us, that make us feel more at home with each other. This book is a collection of stories. A grandson's letter of gratitude to his Nenno, a mother's loving prayer for her children, a daughter remembering her father's wisdom, a friend sharing his despair at this difficult time, a recipe that brings back memories of laughter and love. The making of this book is itself a story of the Afghan artist whose foreign success endangered her life at home. Yet she continues to create with paints made of crushed gemstones, lapis lazuli and emeralds, and with rose petals and tea. Of a production team of storytellers in Dhaka, committed to promoting social justice. Of the artisans binding each book by hand with care and attention. Just a few hundred, a collector's edition. All these layers of stories are stitched together, but there remains space for one more. Yours. What are you grateful for? What traditions hold special meaning for your family? What wisdoms guide your life? Whose story inspires you? Let's share our stories and reconnect.
My job is to make college.
That's just beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. So, so this is the book that came out, and as I mentioned, the artist, some of the illuminations that she did, and I'd like to show you one in particular. This one, if you can see it.
Yes.
It's, you know, it's the coronavirus. So she was getting so upset about seeing this image, you know, the circle with the spokes on TV. She beautified it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So her artwork is extraordinary, and it's throughout this book. And she designed this cover for the book. And at the end of the book, there are some postcards with her artwork. And so the idea is, you know, share your own story with people that you'd like to get to know better. And so the whole project is about capturing our stories and sharing our stories. And perhaps I'll just read one to give you a little flavor of the types of stories that are in here. It's one of my favorites. It's the wisdom that I learned from my dad. And you know, this book is so special for so many reasons, but one of the reasons is because it's the thread of all of these stories is my dad. And my dad was the ultimate storyteller. He loved to tell stories about growing up in Calcutta and studying in London and living in the US. And he told stories with such relish. And many of his stories I've recorded in the book. He's also written in here. And he passed away 3 years ago. And so this book is a treasure for me because it captures so many of his stories. And this particular one is what I've learned from him. My father loved dessert. Anything sweet and delicious brought him so much pleasure. I inherited his sweet tooth. Growing up, whenever there was an office birthday or holiday party at work, Dad would wrap up his share of dessert in a napkin, keep it in his briefcase, and bring it home for me. He'd unwrap it after dinner and put it in front of me with a twinkle in his eye. And then he'd savor the moment. It tasted so much more delicious to see me enjoying every last bite. It's a small story that reveals my dad's huge heart. Making someone else feel comfortable, at ease, happy, well-fed, taken care of, made his day. And it continues, and it ends, while this isn't a particular wisdom that Dad said, it's one of the most important wisdoms that I've learned from his example. Be generous, overly generous. Be kind, overly kind. Spoil people with uncommon hospitality. Care for others' comfort before your own. Share what you love most with abandon, and smile until your eyes sparkle. So, and this one was actually NPR's Morning Edition did a story about the book and the project, and I was able to share a few lines from his wisdom in that piece, which was really beautiful. So, you know, this past year, I had the chance to talk about this book and take it sort of around the world with me to various launches and events in Madrid and Granada and London and Portugal and throughout the US. And it had the effect that I was hoping it would have, which is, as I was reading some of the stories in the book, people started thinking about their own stories. You know, what am I grateful for? What are the traditions I value? What are the wisdoms that stay with me? And that's what I was hoping, you know, to just stir people's own memories of the things that they value and that are important to them. And so this year, I decided to launch a journal. It's called the 30 Days Journal. And inspired by the book, there are different sections on gratitude, traditions, wisdoms, inspiration, reflections, and there are prompts. So the idea is you take 30 days, whether it's the 30 days of Ramadan or whatever 30 days, answer a prompt each day. And by the end of those 30 days, you'll have your own book, your own collection of memories that are important to you. And I think that's, for me, it's the most important thing that we have, right? Is our stories. It's what makes us who we are. It's what gives our life meaning. It's what, it's the reason that, the legacy that we want to leave for our children, our grandchildren, our families, for the world. It sort of asserts the fact that we were here, that we mattered, and that our stories mattered. And for me, it's very important to communicate that you don't have to have extraordinary stories. I mean, the story that I just read is such a simple, ordinary story, but it's a memory that's important to me. And I think it communicates such a beautiful aspect of my dad's personality. So that's really what this book is about and what it's for. It's for those everyday, ordinary stories. So for example, in the first section on gratitude, the first prompt is write a letter of gratitude to a friend or family member. And if you can, read it to them. And, I've asked my kids, now they're much older. It's harder to convince them to do the things that I would like them to do, but they did agree to write in their journals during this month. And my son, who's now 20, he wrote such a beautiful letter to his first friend when they were 4 years old. They went to Montessori school together, and he took this opportunity and this prompt to really convey why their friendship is so meaningful to them. And I think it's so beautiful, and it's something that he will now have, in his journal, and this friend will have. So another question is, what's an aspect of your personality that you're most grateful for? What mistakes or failures are you grateful for? And then it continues. The next section is on wisdoms. What's a wisdom you've learned from your own life that you'd like to pass on? Of course, what's one piece of advice that you would give your younger self? What life lesson did you learn the hard way? And then it goes on to traditions. What's one of your fondest childhood memories? What's a family recipe that brings back happy memories? And on it goes. There's kindness, and there's inspiration, and there's reflections. And so, again, I think we always think we're going to do this at some point, some other time in our life. We'll sit down and write stories that are important to us. And this is just kind of an impetus that do it now. Take this moment and give this gift to yourself and to your families. And perhaps we'll pause here. I'll just, if we can show this second video, and then we can pause for questions. I'd like to talk about just how to start a storytelling practice as well, but perhaps we can take that in the Q&A. So if we can show the video about the journal, and then we can open it up for questions.
The minute you were born, you looked at the world around you so intensely with these luminous eyes. We started calling you luminosity. The doctor called me and said, I've got good news and not so good news. Not exactly the words you want to hear from a doctor. Mom and I tried our best to recreate Dad's recipe. Of course, he used to add a pinch of this and a tad more of that and keep tasting as he went along. These are the stories of our lives. The ordinary, everyday stories that make us who we are, that give our life meaning. It's the memories we want to always remember, the traditions we want to pass on, the wisdoms that we've learned and shared, our reflections on love and loss and life. Let's capture our stories together. During these next 30 days, take a few moments to reflect, really reflect, and write some thoughts in this journal. Use the prompts or share whatever's in your heart. By the end of 30 days, you'll have your own treasure trove of stories, beautifully contained in this keepsake handmade book. For yourself, for your family, and for future generations. What could possibly be more precious than that? Because each one of us is mortal, but our stories endure.
I just wanted to mention that the art that you saw in the journal is by a dear friend and an amazing artist, Adil Abadi. There are these whirling dervishes and the doorway piece, some of my favorite pieces in the journal. And so, I just perhaps will close these initial remarks by saying that we've all gone through such a difficult moment these last 2 years. It's a journey that we've been through together, and it's been lonely, it's been sad, we felt disconnected from each other. And I just feel as we, inshallah, slowly emerge from this time, that it would be so meaningful if we could emerge connecting with each other more deeply, get to know each other in ways that are precious. And we can do that by sharing our stories, just asking each other and taking a moment to really listen to each other. And I also feel that, these 2 years have been a time that we have thought about our lives and how we want to live our lives moving forward, what we value, what we don't, and what's important to us. And this is a moment also, I think, where we can share these reflections in this journal. Just write down, the things that have been meaningful for us as we've gone through this time of reflection. So yeah, that's what this book and this journal is for. It's a way to just deepen our connection. It's a way to get to know each other. There's a quote that I always think about as I do my storytelling and story seeking. It's that it's impossible to hate someone whose story you know. So with that, I'll just pause perhaps for some questions and conversation.
Yeah, I think it's so beautiful the way you've created this journal with the prompts, because we just hold ourselves back and get overwhelmed thinking, oh my gosh, I have to reflect, I have to write a story, I'm not a storyteller, I don't have this background. And so sometimes that kind of holds us back into writing that down or sharing this. So I think having the prompts is such a brilliant idea, because it allows us to that kind of clicks with us, and then we have to just focus on that, and it makes it so much easier to and the stories will start flowing.
Yes.
And inshallah, from there people will be inspired to continue and journal after that. I think this is so beautiful. And as immigrants, I think you and I have had this conversation before, we're always thinking about like how you started on your journey, thinking like, how did we come to this country?
Mhm.
I always think, what about my great grandparents and grandparents? Like, where all did they come from? Yes, they settled in India, but they came from somewhere else, and I want to know their story, and then how we came to this country. And so all of us, I think everybody in this country is an immigrant.
Yeah.
So we all have so many amazing stories, and we want to leave this like a legacy with our children, for them to know where we came from or what our experiences are. Sometimes we just don't take the time to share that with each other because we're so busy, or as you go along with your daily work and your everything else, it just gets sidelined. And I think this is such a beautiful way to lift it up again and share it with everybody. So thank you for this amazing work.
Thank you.
And let me see if we've got Janan Najib is saying, very inspiring. Thank you for this beautiful contribution. We work with many refugees and people that have faced trauma. This is a great idea and very therapeutic. Yes, definitely is. Do you want to say a few words about how, in terms of therapy for ourselves, like, in writing, I always find that, when we're writing something, it really helps us to kind of get, release that burden by writing it down sometimes, and we don't have to say it. It's just like getting it off of your chest, kind of, and just that's like, it brings peace to some people.
Absolutely.
But what are your thoughts about that?
Oh, I think it's incredibly therapeutic, very cathartic. It's something certainly in psychology that people suggest doing, just unburdening whatever it is that's weighing on you, or whatever memories or ideas that you perhaps might be difficult to say to somebody else. Just get them down on paper, and it's a way of unburdening that. And through my volunteer efforts here in DC, we work with refugees as well, and it is definitely a way for a great way for to ask them to share their difficult stories. It may be hard for them to say it openly or to repeat it to people who may be asking, but just to write it down and know that it's for yourself. You don't need to share it with anybody, but you've just kind of unburdened that aspect. It helps to, I think, relieve a little bit of the trauma. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good idea to use it in that way. And for me, it's having done this for the past 10 or 11 years, I just feel so grateful that things that happened 10 years ago, I would not have remembered these, small moments in our families' lives. But because they've been written about, they're there, they remind me that, certain events happened, or the kids went through certain milestones, or the things that they wrote about. You've got a record of it. You won't forget it. You'll be reminded of it. All those memories will come come back to you. And so I think that's also such an important reason to write and to journal and to record memories at whatever time. And I'll just mention how to start a storytelling practice. There isn't a right way or a wrong way. There isn't sort of a formula that you have to follow. For me, I think there are three fundamental, maybe, pieces of advice that I can share. One is to have a belief that you have stories within you that are important and that you should write down. So many people come to me and say, well, I haven't done anything extraordinary, or my life hasn't been so interesting. It's just sort of day to day. But it's the day to day that connects us with each other. It's the ordinariness, that makes us human and relatable and familiar. And none of us are extraordinary. And that's something sort of different. An accolade or award or an achievement, it's not through those things that we connect with each other. It's through just our human emotions, our day-to-day feelings and lives. So please don't ever feel that you don't have story or stories to share. You do. You absolutely do. We all do. And they're important and they're vital, and they should be nurtured and cultivated and written down and shared in whatever way you feel comfortable. It's your life. It's your legacy. It's what makes you who you are. So to me, it's, I think, such a fundamental aspect and such an important aspect of our life. It is. So please feel that, you have stories to share, and you are the best person to tell those stories. You know the details, the nuance. You've lived it. There's nobody else who could tell your story better than you can. So first, it's just believe that you have stories and that they're important. And if you'd like to record them, please, you're in the best position to do that. You don't need to be a good writer. You don't need to have any kind of background or degree or anything like that. Just your own voice, your own story. That's the most authentic thing that you have. And then I would say, in terms of just having a storytelling culture within your families, I would encourage people just to tell their favorite stories out loud, whether it's around the dinner table or on a road trip or just in a car, doing your errands. Share stories, make that sort of, make it a culture of storytelling in your family. And if you start a story, remember when, or an experience or a trip or a holiday or a meal, whatever it is, then whoever's in the car, family, friends, they'll chime in. If they were part of that story, they'll fill in the details. And then you'll have everybody kind of flushing out that memory and sharing what they remember and their sort of take on that story. And so it just becomes a culture of sharing stories and say the same ones over and over again. That's how they get in sort of embedded in us and in our children and in our families. And it's and then I would say the third most important thing is just start. We always sort of wait for the best time, when this finishes, or when I have a vacation, or when I have this sort of moment later on in my life, I'll write my memoir or write these stories down. I would say just start now, today. Just carve out a few minutes if that's what you have, because there won't be a best time or the most perfect moment to write. And you don't feel you have to start from the beginning, like from birth or from some starting point. Just start with whatever comes to mind right now. And it's a practice. Journaling is a practice, and the more you do it, the more it just becomes a natural habit and you enjoy it. And then you'll have all of these pages of memories and stories, and it's really quite beautiful.
Yeah, it's so interesting you mentioned that about starting a culture of stories. In my own family, every time my aunts and uncles meet, my mom and her brothers and sisters meet, it's stories about their childhood. We hear the same stories. And so I think growing up that way, I try to do that with my kids, and tell them, remember this story, remember this one, this happened. And I think we have them, we all have them.
Yes.
And it's just that, getting to the point of just saying, hey, I want to write it down. I think that's the most important thing. Start somewhere, like you said, don't let it hold you back.
Yes.
And I think this is so beautiful. It's also a way, I think if we've learned anything during this COVID pandemic, is to simplify our life and to, to get, because everything has become so complicated. We want to simplify. This is, I feel, another beautiful way of just taking time for yourself. That's one of the things we realized in the pandemic is all these years we've been in this rat race and haven't taken the time for ourselves, and I have been holding so much stress. So this is like a great way, I think, of doing that, of taking time to reflect, to reconnect, with your own history, your own family, your own stories, and leave that legacy, for your future generations, your kids and grandkids. So I think that's beautiful. Okay, so we are at 2:48, but what I do want to say is to our audience is that we are planning to do like an in-person workshop. I think we were talking about towards the end of June. We will have at the museum a storytelling workshop where you can participate in person, and we'll send out more details to you, and Salma will be conducting that workshop. So we're really looking forward to that. And if you have any questions, we've shared the links for Salma's website, and we will send it out again with a copy of this this recording to all the folks who've registered and joined us. You'll have links of where you can go and take a look at how you can purchase and read more about her own journey and her story, and both of these beautiful, amazing books. Let's see, somebody has a.
I think there's there's a comment by Jocelyn. Perhaps if we have another minute, we can just.
Sure, we can. Yeah, so Jocelyn, thank you for sharing with us. She said, I lost my mom 2 years ago and have found that writing the stories I remember about her, and even to write to her all the things I wish I would have said while she was still with me, has been such a foundational part of my healing. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And I'm so sorry for your loss, Jocelyn. And I think that's beautiful that you're writing the stories that you remember about your mom, and writing to her, perhaps even a gratitude letter to her. I'm sure that's very healing for you. I'll just share something personal as well. I mentioned that my father passed away, and he was such an important aspect of this 30 days project. And as I was working on the book and assembling all these different posts, I came across 2 comments from my father. And first of all, so he would get the blog. I didn't even know that he was really reading the blog. Just in terms of technology, I would read several posts to him when he would visit, but I didn't know that he was actually, when he received it in his email, clicking and reading. But he was. And then he also commented on 2 occasions. And I hadn't seen those comments at the time, but as I was putting the book together and after he passed, I saw the comments, and the comments were one to my son and one to my daughter in response to posts that they had that they had written. And they were such beautiful, grandfatherly, as you can imagine, just cheering them on and saying how proud he was of them, and how he can't wait to see the things that they how they become in their life, and what they go on to do, and how they contribute. And so I found these after he had passed, and now that my kids are much older. And for me, it was a godsend. It was my dad sort of letting us know that he is looking out for the kids. And I printed them out, and the kids keep them with them. It's just a reminder of their grandfather's love and adoration for them. And there are just so many blessings when you start going down this road of writing. Things are then recorded, and yeah, you can turn back to them when you need some solace, when you need some comfort, when you need some inspiration. You just turn back to either your words or other people's stories, and you've got that. So yeah.
Yeah, very beautiful. And I think Jocelyn is also saying your writing has been incredibly inspirational throughout this process, Salma. Thank you.
Oh, that's very kind, Jocelyn. Thank you for your support. Appreciate it.
Yes. And yeah, I'm definitely sending it. I can already think of all the family members I want to inspire to write these stories. And I think it's beautiful. Any last closing remarks? Anything else that you would like to share, Salma?
I think just that, our stories are powerful. They are healing for us, as we've talked about. They help us connect with each other. They're what we have. They're just the only thing that is truly uniquely ours is our stories. And as I ended the video, each one of us is mortal. We will pass, but it's our stories that will endure. And I think that's perhaps the most powerful message of all, to encourage us to just start writing and sharing and connecting.
Yeah, well, beautifully said. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. We will be sending out a copy of this recording with all the links where you can find all of the information on Salma Hasan Ali and her book, both her books, and then also a link to our museum. Thank you again for supporting us and joining us this afternoon. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we look forward to hearing from you if you have any other questions, and look for our emails about the in-person workshop on storytelling. So we look forward to seeing you there as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
you, everyone. And thank you, Ghazala and Savannah.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Salma. Thank you for joining us.
Take care.